Hello, everyone. This is Michael Christie, Artistic and Music Director of Southern California's New West Symphony. When the entire world locked down in March 2020, New West Symphony knew that music would be essential to people's well-being. So I challenged the New West Symphony to ask itself who our community is and how do our cultures and traditions influence each other. Of course, we couldn't gather you, our audience, in a theater to explore that question. So we went online, and the discoveries were gratifying and revelatory.
Hello, friends. I'd like to introduce Dwight Brown, who is the chair of the New West Symphony Board of Directors and the owner of Home Helpers Home Care. Already an integral member of the Thousand Oaks community, Dwight assumed his leadership responsibilities for New West Symphony during the pandemic summer and has been working tirelessly for the arts and his clients.
It's easy to forget now how scary those early days were. We were seeing news footage in China of people wearing hazmat suits, spraying things down. We were seeing hospitals get filled up. Cruise ships were being unloaded directly into hospitals. We've adapted to some degree, but when you look back, you can remember just how scary and unknown and unpredictable it all was. We immediately met as a board and said, what can we do for the community? And it was so amazing and impressive how everybody wanted to respond by reaching out and being a member of the community. We took a list of 600 names, divided those up among board members, and we called 600 or 700 people to ask how they were doing. Just a simple wellness check. Are you feeling okay? Do you have everything that you need? Is there anything that we can do for help? It was overwhelming and touching the way people responded to our calls. It's funny, the resounding answer that I got from multiple people was, we're incredibly bored. I don't know how many more Sudokus that we can do while maintaining our sanity. We embraced technology. So we started by asking, how can we bring music and bring this education into people's homes? We knew that Zoom was going to be a popular option, and we started immediately thinking about what can we do to make Zoom sound good? How can we get out there to people with it? We actually visited members of the community and helped them install Zoom and show Zoom, often through the windows of their homes, showing them how to use the technology. So I think those were two responses that were, I look back and I'm proud of. I feel like we did a good job of staying on top of the health news, when were things going to reopen. I'd hate to second guess anything about how we responded. It doesn't give credit to how much work we did at the time. The only thing that I would add that's maybe a lesson from the entire pandemic is to appreciate each other. We lost people, we lost subscribers, we lost friends during this time, and the only thing I would do differently is just appreciate those connections a little more. And something that I didn't mention when you asked about what we did right, it never hurts to get lucky. We were incredibly lucky to have Artistic and Music Director Michael Christie on our side, who is always ahead on everything.
I can't ask for a better partner than our music director, Michael Christie. Both of us spoke to the influencers in our community. We talked to cultural and music experts, and Global Sounds Local Cultures was born. The idea was to create a series of documentary films using our concerts to explore how world and Western music influenced each other. We used the data from the most recent census to highlight the cultures within our community. Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, our own Bank of America Performing Arts Center, opened their doors and became our recording studios. I am so proud of what we have accomplished. You know, Dwight, it gives me so much joy and pride to recite these statistics, because in the process of creating beautiful music and beautiful season, we also were able to feature 66% of all of our guest artists came from BIPOC communities, which is Black, Indigenous people of color, and 48% were women. And out of 62 musical compositions that we featured on the program, 44% were from BIPOC communities, and 18 of them were women. So I am just so grateful that the community rallied behind the New West Symphony and Michael Christie's ideas and the talent, incredible talent of the New West Symphony players, and we presented Global Sounds, Local Cultures. Dwight, you've helped dozens, if not hundreds, of older people navigate the online world as host for New West Symphony events and as a care provider. How should organizations like New West position themselves to provide great experiences for people who may be turning to technology for more of their connection with the world?
So this is the million-dollar question, I think, for all arts organizations. How do we provide, how do we bring the arts to them, and how do we do it with technology? I think the answer here is really you have to provide an excellent product and be able to and willing to provide that product in the way that the consumer wants it. Sometimes they're going to want it live, sometimes they're going to want it at home and on demand. No matter what it is they want an excellent product. So we need to be ready to pivot, we need to be adaptable. Technology changes all the time. So Zoom, 2 years ago, if I had said Zoom, everybody would have thought I was talking about making their camera lens different. And now it's second nature. Organizations are going to have to be ready to meet the consumer where they are, give them what they want, and then be willing to adapt to new technologies that arise.
You know, Siley has to sing the same phrase that the quartet is doing later. So she kind of has to memorize that phrase and then they have to follow her. But that's a form in Indian classical music we call a julbandi. And so it's kind of a question and answer type of thing. And the phrases get shorter and shorter and shorter. And everyone's there thinking, gosh, how are these people where is it gonna go? It just kind of builds this amazing tension.
Maga pa maga re sa re ni sa sa re ga ma pa da pa ni da pa maga re sa 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 re ga maga re sa re ni sa sa re ga maga pa maga re sa Gama pa da pa ni da pa ma ga pa ni da pa ma ga re sa ni sa.
Composer and pianist Reena Esmail has been an entrepreneurial force for good in Southern California and steadily risen among the ranks of North America's leading composers. Reena was a crucial early partner to me and New West as we sought and reached out to constituents to build our Global Sounds, Local Cultures presentations. Reena, thank you for bringing so much to New West Symphony and for joining us again.
It's great to be here.
I know there were tremendous pressures on you as lockdowns went into place. So how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I mean, I think that it was really different for composers in the pandemic than it was for performers. We definitely were in a position where we were getting more work, a lot of us, because performers who would have been touring and were kind of grounded all of a sudden started thinking about what they wanted to do next and thinking about maybe commissioning work. And so I've been working really steadily pretty much through the pandemic, and maybe harder than I've ever worked before because I wasn't traveling. But hopefully in the next few weeks, I'll be taking a week-long vacation, which I'm really looking forward to. I think I underestimated how much hearing things live was really valuable, and kind of interacting with musicians and getting to hear their ideas in real time.
I imagine that when we recorded your work, Magan Reena, in October of 2020, you possibly hadn't been collaborating with many musicians at that point. Would we have been among your first in-person collaborators since the lockdowns began?
I remember feeling walking into that situation live recording, masked. It was definitely one of the first times I had been in that type of situation. And it definitely felt both so unnerving to suddenly have to kind of yell through a mask at musicians who are also trying to like take in what you were saying. But then it also felt so good to see people again. So just a really interesting combination of emotions.
You've been at the forefront of a long overdue embrace of diversity in the classical music world that was taking form pre-pandemic, but certainly intensified during the pandemic. And now performing arts are planning live experiences. So what do you think we've all learned? And what do you think we'll take forward as it relates to diversity?
You know, one of the things that I've always said and that I think, bears repeating is that diversity is the best kind of diversity is diversity of perspective. And of course, that's what the thing is that really energizes our organizations is when people see things from different perspectives. And often, someone coming from a different culture, someone having a different gender identity, someone being a different age or having a different kind of, physical limitations or abilities. All those things really inform our perspective. But what we're looking at, to kind of move beyond the optics of what it means that someone looks a certain way, and to move beyond the metrics of, well, this percentage of these people are doing this thing, I think we have to realize that we're valuing different perspectives. And the thing is that those perspectives require relationship. You can't just get those perspectives by, mining into someone's mind. You have to really build a relationship with the people who you're working with. And of course, that relationship requires trust. And I think one of the hard things in the pandemic is that we have, not been able to develop that offline time, the time where you would be having a meeting or having a rehearsal and you just go to get coffee and you kind of get to know someone. And I think that time, getting that back will be so valuable in developing these really kind of warm, full relationships with people. And I'm looking forward to that.
I feel like so much of the pandemic time was either long drawn out horizontal timelines or really urgent extraordinary panic timeline. So how did you juggle all of that and keep sane? Because I know a lot of people, including the New West Symphony, were hot on your heels for information, for music, to see where we would go next. How did you balance it all?
I mean, I'll just start by saying I have an amazing staff and I have amazing people that work for me. And what you see, my music, the things that I think about and I say, they're possible because I have help and I have a team. And that team really stood by me through the pandemic. And so, you really can't do this alone, even if it does. We revere people like Beethoven and Mozart, and we think of them as these single entities. And I will say that as a composer today, I would not be able to do what I do without that. But, that being said, I do keep a really rigorous schedule. I do spend, a certain amount of time a day writing, a certain amount of time, responding to requests from the outside world. And, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, I've had to learn a lot about boundaries and a lot about, when I can say yes to a thing and when saying yes to that thing is actually not going to be good for either party. So that's one of the things that I think I really learned in this time.
And since COVID allowed us to think about different ways to express ourselves, as we head back into the concert hall, could you imagine a wider array of offerings happening? And if so, and everything was open to your imagination, could you imagine some ideal concert presentations that would tie different formats together?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I actually really loved, and I don't think everyone feels the same way, but for me, I really loved when people would do online concerts and you could actually comment as things were happening. And that's just so awesome because a lot of times performers don't get any feedback from the audience except just at the end of the piece, people would kind of clap. And so what I loved was, someone would do some amazing cadenza or something would happen and people would be commenting, yeah, in the comment section, or people who knew about a certain thing would be commenting, or even a lot of times I was asked to live comment on my own pieces and talk about, where the thing came from as people were listening to the piece. And that's something you really can't do in real time. But I'm wondering if there's some way where we retain a little bit of that, because I think for an audience, it's so exciting to to have that context as you're listening to the music. And I know, if you look on Spotify or something, there are sometimes for the really big popular songs, they do have those facts playing as the song is going. And I think I wish we did that in concert music. But, also it's like, I love this idea of collaboration across distances. I love the idea that technology is getting good enough that we can bring people in from different places and have them even rehearse together, even if not perform together. It really expands what people are able to do past people who live in driving distance from them, which, really brings our cultures together. Yeah, I think those things are amazing. And all that to say that one of the best things about being back in the concert hall is that I see that musicians have had some time to really kind of go internally, to spend some time like really practicing things deeply that they might not have had the chance to. Because I remember kind of before the pandemic, you would sometimes go to these concerts, especially in the spring where there are a lot of concerts going on, and you just see these exhausted musicians just, okay, like, what are we playing? Let's get through this. And I went to this concert, one of the first concerts back, and just saw the musicians were so happy to be there, so grateful to be performing. And as an audience member, you feel that, you metabolize that, and it makes you so excited to engage with musicians again. So I hope we don't lose that.
Reena, again, I can't thank you enough for everything that you brought to us over a year ago when we were all scrapping around trying to figure out what this could possibly look like. Your genuine enthusiasm for trying to make things work, your generosity to open your channels to us, enabled us to create some really wonderful programs, and we're very proud of them. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
As it became clear that New West's pandemic home would be online, it was essential to find experts in media production who could help us create a dynamic video presentation that would stand side by side with a wide range of musical performances. It seems like the entire musical world, the entire symphony world, was going online in the fall of 2020. And you seemed to be very keen on making us go deeper than just recording an archival. What were your goals?
Yeah, so as multicam director, working on a range of different kinds of projects, we've noticed that certain productions give the viewer a new perspective, and other productions give them a familiar perspective, And we thought that viewers are giving up being in person, and so much of what makes listening to orchestral music wonderful is being in the same space. And so we felt like we needed to sort of up the ante, give them something new and more powerful, a different, more unique, perhaps intimate experience to kind of counterbalance for the loss of being able to be with the orchestra in person. So we developed an approach that shot from different angles and got a lot closer to the players, and really tried to direct their attention to these sort of little unique performance moments that happen in the back row or in different parts of the orchestra that you wouldn't necessarily catch, in the room. So it was a unique opportunity to take viewers deeper and more of an intimate connection to the music, to the performance, and help them see it from new perspectives. And that was a really lovely challenge.
Well, and along those lines, if you're in the room, you don't get that intimacy. You can't see that close up. But we're also working during a pandemic, so we can't have cameramen that are within 6 feet of the players, and the players themselves can't be within 6 feet of each other. And the woodwinds have different requirements, and the percussionists have, and all of these different things. And so we were able to utilize robotics on a lot of the cameras and things that Daryl's constructed or found along the way. I loved the way that the two of you kind of complement each other, because you would see something and you would be able to go in with a specific lens or a specific camera and get close, and then you were able to take that and translate that into the final product, and all of it just came together. And I think that sometimes when we watch things like this, we don't understand necessarily the work that goes into it, because there's two different approaches. One is let's just set up a bunch of cameras, shoot everything, and then we'll figure it out later. But there was an intentionality here to say, let's look at the scores. Let's talk to Michael in advance and Sasha in advance and have a sense of where the music is going to go so that we make sure that the cameras are following where the music goes and anticipating that movement and capturing every little bit along the way. And that's, I think, as I've watched you work and your team work and you work, that's been one of the things I've been most impressed with on the day of, is the way they've moved and shifted. And there's almost an artistry to the movement of the cameras that coincides with the movement of the music, and it's quite beautiful to watch.
A great example of that was when we shot the Indian Dancer. So we got to put a fabulous operator, kind of a Steadicam rig, and they went out on that stage and in some ways like danced together, right? Like we got to shoot it very dynamically, and that just doesn't often happen. I mean, it happens like in a music video, but it doesn't happen very often in the orchestral world. So that was a delightful example of that, where we just, we were given...
There was a lot of acrobatics. I remember
Yeah.
the cameraman saying, this was the hardest work that we've ever done.
But we were given permission to sort of break the fifth wall, right? And bring the audience on stage with performers, and that was magical. And you're right, we used a lot of robots. We had, it was primarily an audio recording. So everything had to be very quiet on set. And when you're shooting a feature, episodics, there's all sorts of noise and stuff that you deal with, and you fix things in post-production. We don't have those luxuries. We're capturing a performance. And so we had to come up with all sorts of interesting tools and techniques to get the shot without having any noise on stage. And that was a particular challenge that was really fun to address.
Yeah. Well, and it was part of the magic too of the Meet the Artist and the Cultural Insight program too, because then, you see the artist performing, you hear these amazing concert performances or symphony performances, but you don't often get the story behind it too. And that's what I loved, was being able to hear some of the stories. And I think it was it Wu Man? And I can't remember who was performing with, but at the Reagan they were performing, and they're just...
Hang Wang.
Yes, and there was a moment where they're going so fast on the instrument and they're moving, and all of a sudden the whole thing just fell apart. And within a moment they were just laughing and having a blast. And here are these performers who are just at the top of their game, Grammy award winning, internationally famous. And it's so fun to see them miss a note or something, laugh it off, and then go right back and nail something that in a million years, if my life depended on it, I could not do what they just did. And yet we get to capture that, and the people at home get to watch that and see that and be part of it. There's magic involved in that.
Very special, very special. Daryl, what you saw through the eye of the camera, the viewers saw in the final presentation. How did you achieve the goals that we just discussed?
Yeah. So we did a lot of preliminary work to go through the score and make sure that we had what we would call coverage, make sure that all those solo moments and that we had a great shot to capture those key moments of every piece. And for the most part, it worked out. We moved very quickly as a team, and for folks who've ever done video production before, sometimes you can take hours to set up. We would often have 5 minutes to set up between a piece. So we were, doing our best to make sure that every shot was perfect, and didn't always nail it, but we did. It was a 9-camera shoot, so we had a lot of angles and coverage, and were really able to be where we needed to be most of the time. And then we also had this amazing jib operator, and we had that's the sweeping camera that kind of goes over the orchestra, and he was a really special fellow who, true lover of orchestral music and works, and he instinctively really knew the pieces and knew where to go, and so it was just a delight. Many of his shots just sort of would sweep you in as the viewer into the cellist or whatever the moment was that was unfolding, and that was not rehearsed. He did all of that on the fly, and it was really lovely.
What were those recording sessions like? Were they 6, 4, 5, 3 hours? What were they like?
Well, here's the funny thing. So if we were shooting a film, we'd be aiming for, forget about COVID and everything else, just a normal day. maybe 4 or 5 pages if we're being aggressive.
How many
And
finished minutes
on
would that
film,
be? Yeah.
maybe 4 or 5 minutes of finished, produced, and that's a whole day, 12-hour day, sun up, sundown. Here we shot 2 programs in one day. How many hours?
3 hours finished.
3 hours finished.
For each program.
Well, for the orchestral content, I believe was closer to 90 minutes.
Yeah.
on
Well,
those shoot days,
but
right?
that's okay. That's the fun thing too, because while the orchestral program was being recorded here, oftentimes the B unit with Jill was at the Reagan or somewhere else or in Oxnard filming Culture Insights and filming Meet the Artist, because a lot of the artists could only come in for that weekend. They had rehearsals on Saturday, so Sunday everyone was buzzing, and it was a flurry of activity.
And Michael was everywhere. Michael
was.
was conducting, Michael was writing scripts, Michael was absolute at Culture Insights and Meet the Artist. He is one special music director.
He is one special director. Also, I'm convinced that he's a twin, and he has there's another Michael. That's how he pulls it off, because there's no other way to explain it.
That's right.
Jillian, one of my moments that I remember, I think it was past midnight, and we were editing a concert via FaceTime because of COVID, and we were sharing, and it was Holocaust Remembrance Week that we commemorated International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I felt privileged that we were able to see and edit Jerusalem Quartet, famous Jerusalem Quartet. How did you feel about that particular concert?
That concert was really, really special in the timing of it, because my kids were studying that at school. 8th grade and a junior in high school, both going through the same, World War II curriculum. And so as I was editing it, I brought them in and I said, you have to see this. And to be honest, I felt that way about a lot of the content that we created, because getting to know the artists and their cultures and their intimate knowledge of the instruments. And there were so many times that I told, because I was editing at home in my studio, I called the kids in, you have to hear this or see this or learn this. And I have a feeling that the audience was the same way, that everyone learned so much and had such an amazing front row seat to these artists like never before.
Especially now that we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Having that type of season was both, we were fortunate, and also it opened our eyes. Michael and I don't know every culture, so we interviewed the experts for hours and hours on end. You're speaking about how long it took you, how long it took us to create the content and be genuine about it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and there's an important thing there too that we didn't say yet, but I think one of the great takeaways, and I'm going to speak for all three of us on this, has been working with you and your team. So, I know a lot of people probably know who you are and know who Michael is. I don't know if as many people know who Sasha or Sergey or some of the others, Maggie and Stephanie, but you have this phenomenal team of just incredibly talented, incredibly gifted, incredibly humble, hardworking people. And it's been such a blessing. And I know, like Sasha, I think we've spent maybe more time with Sasha than we've spent with our families over the past year. And then Michael, just what an incredibly, I'm so impressed with just how ridiculously intelligent and knowledgeable and talented Michael is, and yet how funny and just humble he is too. Just an amazing team. We've talked about some of the ways that you can continue to diversify the audience through technology and bring the stories to life in different ways, and bring the stories to audiences who can't physically be here in person. And I think, well, I know I speak for all three of us, that that's something we hope to be part of in the future, because we love being a part of it, and selfishly we want to be here. But regardless of our involvement, I just hope for this organization that is a part of the vision moving forward, and that the community here embraces that and supports that and pushes for that. Because my eyes personally have been opened to this piece of the arts that exists here in our backyard. I live in Moore Park, you live here in Thousand Oaks, like we're here, this is our community. And now that I've experienced this, I want all of our community to experience this. And so regardless of our involvement moving forward, I hope that this organization, under your incredible leadership, honestly, you've done an amazing job. And I don't know if people realize all that you've done, but we know. We've heard the hours where you're on calls at midnight with a baby on one hip and the phone in the other hand, and leading through chaos in a season where you could have just packed it up and said, we're not going to do anything right now. We're going to shut down and hold on until we can come back. And so I hope that under your leadership and under the leadership of Dwight and the board, that this organization just continues to push into new territory and bring the arts to more people who need it, and to our children who need to be exposed to this.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Wu Man, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a long time and so much has happened. So I'm curious how you're doing and how things are looking up as we head into reopening of in-person performing again.
Yeah, I thank you, Michael. It's been good. It's been really good. I working on a lot of recordings, and I came out to 2 CDs already released, so that's kind of good. And since we met last year, right? It's been I mostly I stay home, but I traveled 2 times. Went to East Coast, did 2 concerts.
Do you have any memories of our time together?
I really remember very clearly we did the interview in the library, Reagan Library, and behind all the aircraft, and it was such a beautiful outside. The weather was so beautiful, and we talk about Chinese New Year, Chinese music, and that was my, during the lockdown time, that was my great experience. I never forget that.
It was such a beautiful experience having you with the New West Symphony musicians. We were all excited and nervous to come together on the stage again. You were in masks. We were trying to learn the style of Tandun's Concerto for Pipa and Strings. What was your memory of that experience?
Besides on the stage, I think that was the first time with the new symphony, and I remember the piece has a shouting part, and we all mask on, and then all the cameras, here, there, it feel like in some kind of movie studio without the audience, but that's a very different experience. But also I joined the symphony member playing my own piece, and we played like silk and bamboo music. And I remember the violist to play the wood block, all the Chinese percussion instrument. I think I was so happy. I was so happy to see all the musicians there, and to see you and conduct in person. Feels like, okay, finally I'm on the stage again.
Many of our colleagues have said the experience of being at home for such a long time has made them reconsider how they're going to approach travel again. And I just wonder if there are aspects of your touring that you maybe are thinking about differently, whether it's the amount of travel, the different kinds of pieces. What's your takeaway from all that as you think to the future of your travel?
Well, I definitely, travel part is hard. It's always hard, but I definitely miss stage. I miss audience. I want I want to be with a person, sitting on the stage and with the audience there. I want to see people. um, well, that's it. To me, it's hard, like half and a half. I definitely miss to see people, as I mentioned, but I also enjoyed not hassle at the airport. Not travel that much. So I don't know the life. I don't know how the life gonna be, and how for our musician and dealing with the trouble again. But I think I'm ready.
So, artists in the world music space are natural collaborators and improvisers. And I'm thinking about our reliance on technology during calendar year 2020 and 2021. And it offered us new ways to collaborate that are probably going to endure. So, how are you thinking about the balance for yourself between performing live, but also maybe continuing to embrace technology to reach audiences?
I think the use of the technology and to live concert, that's a very, very different and different experience for audience, and then for musician as well, for myself. So to me, I think through those 16, 17 months experience, um, I think it's a very good use of technology will be for the lot of education program, education project. So people can close to see, you can talk to students, and you can show your instrument, the technique, how you play, how, a lot of details, those things you can't not spend the time on the stage. So that's probably, the preparation, the rehearsal, that kind of a process may be very good to use the technology to share with the audience. Usually kind of behind the scene, but this we can audience can see that, how the conductor, how the musician, they work together, how to make the piece become alive, and then the live production, the final production will be on stage. I think that probably kind of dream life for musician.
Diversity and inclusion was a big theme coming into the pandemic lockdown time, but also was part of our awakening as we experienced technology and music, that orchestras and presenters in North America especially can bring more diversity into their presentations through music from around the world.
Well, I definitely hope this is gonna be the future. I definitely hope the diversity is such important. Um, um, you cannot deny it. This is it. This is us. This is the globe. This is the earth we living in. This is all diversity. So I think for us, for musician, and for all the presenter, I think including the viewer audience and younger generation students, I think this is the time to think more, and how can we approach, how can we introduce. As myself, I'm a play Chinese instrument, and how can I work with the orchestra with a different setting, and not only stay with the tradition, but also step out to going, get out from the box, and to reach out more viewer, more people, to share with them. So I think this is very, very important.
Wu Man, it was so meaningful for the New West Symphony to partner with you for our Tour of China program, to have your perspective, to have your incredible musicality, to also just enjoy your calm and your humor and your fun. So thank you for being such an instrumental part of our season and of our family during what could have been a much more stressful time were it not for people like you who brought such beautiful music to all of us. Alireza Ardekani is the executive director of Southern California's Farhang Foundation. Alireza and Farhang were partners par excellence when the New West Symphony's tour of Iran was being developed and presented. Alireza, thank you for joining me again. We were all in our homes for months, but Farhang Foundation provided a huge amount of activity online. So I'm wondering what the experience was like for you, putting all of that programming online, and what were the standout presentations for you and your viewers?
Well, like with every organization, we had many challenges we had to overcome due to the pandemic. And we managed to quickly pivot everything online, similar to the New West Symphony. And it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise where we opened ourselves to a more global audience. And of course, partnering with organizations such as New West Symphony was one of the highlights of the year, as well as other organizations around the world who we may have not been able to collaborate with otherwise if we were just focusing on in-person productions and programming.
When we did our collaboration, our performances were viewed by people in 55 countries. So clearly there's a great interest in Iranian music and symphonic music. And although the worlds don't necessarily speak to each other as much as perhaps they will in the future, I wonder how you felt your community embracing music during this time. Did you have people calling out for you to provide this music for their own self-soothing or for motivation? What was the experience you were having with your community?
Well, I think this past year, more than ever before, we realized the power of music, the universal power of music, that how music can benefit everyone in every situation and from every background, and bring positivity to them, even when they are locked up in quarantine at home and have no connection to the arts. Our music programs were one of the most successful programs that we featured this past year and a half, and we continue to work with the various musicians from around the world to present them. One of the silver linings of COVID was that we were able to collaborate with musicians and artists from all over the world, which typically may not be able to come to the United States. And so it kind of opened us up to even more variety and diversity. I think there were so many instances in this collaboration that really inspired us and made us so happy. All the great talks you guys had, you had gone really out of your way to provide a well-rounded experience and to really give a true tour of Iran to your audience. I think that bringing musicians from Iranian musicians with a traditional Iranian instruments to perform with the New West Orchestra and Western instruments was really one of the highlights, I thought, of the experience for me personally. And I loved enjoying listening to these musicians from different backgrounds working together and performing on one stage. It was really inspiring. And to also, see artists working during the pandemic was very inspiring. So I applaud you and everyone else at Farhang Foundation. We applaud the New West Symphony for putting on this amazing season and having us visit all these great countries and be exposed to various cultural identities.
Alyssa Park is the concertmaster of the New West Symphony, founding member of the Los Angeles-based Lyris String Quartet, a prolific studio recording artist, and a soloist with orchestras around the world. I'm fortunate to have her as a creative partner at the New West Symphony. Alyssa, thank you for joining me, and thank you especially for your incredible work with New West during our Global Sounds Local Cultures virtual season.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. My pleasure. Glad to join.
For most people, COVID lockdown meant a slowdown when it came to work, but I don't think you slowed down very much. How would you describe how music pivoted for you, especially on the recording side?
Um, I mean, yes. I mean, it was a difficult beginning. I think at the very beginning, it was really scary, actually. As a live performer, there was, virtually nothing for almost a year. I think the main questions I had for myself is, what does it mean to be a musician? Am I a musician if I'm not performing in front of people? What's my connection to the music? How does that relate to other people? I mean, all these sort of life questions came into view. I'm not sure I answered all of them, but I did get lucky. I do some behind the scenes, basically recording work for television and movies. And some of that production had already happened before the lockdown, and they needed music. So I, called all of my wonderful engineer friends and asked them for advice on what equipment to get, what recording microphones to get. And fortunately, I was able to record some music for some of the shows I work on. But in general, mostly speaking about live performances, it was a tough year for all musicians, I think. Yeah.
Indeed. But we were able to reunite with audiences outdoors long into the pandemic at the Reagan Library in April. And it was such a powerful experience for all of us at the Symphony. So what do you remember about performing live again? And how much does that live audience factor into your performance experience?
It's a completely and totally different experience. I mean, playing that concert live with everyone in the orchestra was amazing. I mean, I felt like, thank God I had a mask on, because I think I teared up a few times. There's nothing like playing in front of a live audience. I mean, everything from, just the minuscule things, everything from the preparation to the actual performance to the rehearsals. It's just a completely different energy. I mean, I loved providing the recorded material for the New West audience. But playing live will always give me an extra bit of energy. You always have a little bit of nerves. It's always exciting. It always allows me to be spontaneous in the moment. I'm always feeding off the energy of other musicians and you too, Michael. In your conducting, we did, I think, a couple performances. So both performances were not the same. They're never the same, right? And I think the live performance is incredibly special, and it was great to have an audience with us.
During our recordings, I asked so much of you and our New West colleagues when we assembled for each session. We did 2 of the tours in each recording day, and they were really intense. But I'm so grateful for your incredible professionalism and dedication. Can you take us a bit behind the scenes for how it felt to be playing with colleagues, even in that environment, and generally what your experience was like as we assembled from time to time through the lockdown?
Sure. Well, first of all, I have to say, New West, as an organization and as a group, I mean, we are so lucky. One thing that was apparent to me was just the quality of musicianship. Mostly we did strings at the beginning, and then we were able to expand into more of the full orchestra. But I have such gratitude for all the musicians that worked so hard. I mean, we rarely get to work so intimately together and in such a, kind of high pressure situation, and everyone handled it so well. Everyone was, I think, grateful to be there. Michael, you put together, I was just looking back at our season. I mean, you put together these amazing programs. I mean, I don't even know how you did it. Just to come up with the curate these concerts was quite a feat, and so well put together. the story behind each cultural program was really remarkable. So I want to thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing like playing with the newest musicians. It was fantastic.
Your performance of music from John Williams' Schindler's List in January was very meaningful to our audience. And I wonder, as a performer, how you process the emotion the listener may feel about a work from the performer's side.
You know, that work in particular was, I mean, it's incredible. I came to it maybe in two different ways. One is, I mean, also understanding where this music is coming from, you know, my sort of limited understanding of it, and also having worked with, you know, John Williams in a recording situation. As a performer, I think it's important. It's like knowing historical background, right? So I think it's important to understand, you know, the music, and then maybe have an understanding of the composer and why they compose the work, what it's for, perhaps their intentions for the music. And then I think the sort of last part is my interpretation of it, and what I want to bring to it. And I think the synergy of all those three things coming together is what helps me prepare for, you know, the emotion of it, but also the, in a weird way, it gives me spontaneity. It allows me the freedom to bring all those three elements together. Because I'm not sure, at least for me, I feel like, you know, the composer's intentions are always the most important. But if I can incorporate that into my interpretation of the music, I can then also sort of insert myself in it and give a performance that I feel honors that.
Internationally acclaimed violinist Anne Akiko Meyers was the first featured artist for New West Symphony's Global Sounds Local Culture series, and it was her first time playing with an ensemble since the pandemic lockdowns 8 months earlier. She was featured during our inaugural Tour of Japan presentations. Anne, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's great to see you today.
And your performance with New West Symphony in October of 2020 was your first with other musicians on the same stage since the world locked down in March. What do you remember about that experience?
I remember how happy I was to get the downbeat, hear the A, share the Bach with Alyssa Park and the New West Symphony, and the wonderful memories that were made from that concert.
I know at the time we were planning for you to play Bach with the orchestra that you had a lot of other projects on the go as well. So what materialized after our time together?
I've played several streaming concerts, and I just recently performed opening night at the Brevard Music Center with Keith Lockhart for a full sold-out house. Really hot, sweaty Beethoven. And I was premiering new cadenzas by John Corigliano, which were just magnificent. And to be able to be on stage sharing this music with live bodies was just unbelievable feeling.
You're actually one of the few artists that we've collaborated with during this time that had a family at home, meaning young kids. And I have to imagine that your experience is not dissimilar to mine, trying to figure out the balance of ongoing work demands with this completely unprecedented 24/7 parenting. So what do you think your family has taken away in a positive sense from your time together, and what have you gotten out of it that might be something you wouldn't have if we had just been doing our touring as normal?
Well, I've learned, previously I really enjoy drinking wine. So wine has been a huge help in our house. But aside from that, really being together, I think we appreciate that we've been healthy, and especially with our older parents. I am just so thankful that they are still there. They're in one piece. They're not, they haven't had health issues. So that has been so important. And I think the children also realize just how the family unit is so, it's the glue that keeps us together. Yeah, that's been amazing. And like to even travel, I haven't really traveled out of the house on my own like I used to. I used to concertize always on my own, but now it's like everybody wants to go together. They just can't even imagine being apart. It's like so.
Amazing. I wonder if this time that you have spent away from the concert hall stage has allowed you to look at music differently or reimagine works you might have been able to play at the drop of a hat, Barber, Bach, just works that we know that you're so intimately familiar with. Are you thinking about them differently now that you've just had time away from them, not just those pieces, but others or music in general?
Yeah, I definitely went through a phase last year where I was absolutely going through everything in my library. And, when you don't have a deadline and the deadline gets pushed further and further away, it definitely changes how you view practicing music, everything. And it's such an emotional sport that we are involved in. So, and physical as well. So to have, this extra time to breathe and think and just explore. You know, every day is kind of has to be taken one step at a time. And I think we're so used to, I personally was so used to planning and having everything planned out so in advance. I mean, 1 to 2 years in advance. But now it's like to know that something possibly might happen in 2 weeks' time is just really different mentally. And you know, you don't have that it's just not it's not in cement that it's going to actually happen, because so many concerts were canceled, and so and still, you know, things are getting figured out. So there just has to be such an adaptability and such a flexibility in spirit and in mind to be able to just go with the flow.
Well, you really went with the flow with New West Symphony. I remember our original calls way last summer in 2020 when I said, what would you think about getting together? And I think your reply was, how do you even do that in this kind of circumstance? So thank you so much for imagining with us and exploring with us and creating such a beautiful performance in such not ideal circumstances, but which turned out to be healing for all of us.
Michael, you give me the credit, but it's really such a testament to you and your inventiveness that you created that program. And I thank you for allowing us to share that together. That was very, very inspiring to me. So thank you very much for your insight and for your passion to continue making music.